Welcome back, my friends. This is William M. Briggs, the statistician to the stars. We're going to do another episode of What Are the Chances? This one, an important one. Well, they're all mostly are. They're just fun, but this one's kind of important. The probability of God. This creeps up from time to time. Greedy just came in. I asked him to come over here and say, "Come on up here, Greedy. Come here." Let's see if he can come up here. Hang on a second. Come over here. Oh, he ran out. Okay. Greedy is the local chipmunk who I feed a lot of nuts. Every time I make a film, he comes in here to watch me, but then he doesn't come up onto the screen because he's shy. Anyway, so the probability of God. This question comes up from time to time. And I want to answer it very simply for you. There is no probability of God. And the reason is nothing has a probability. Not God. Not anything. Probability doesn't exist. I talk about this in the class all the time. Probability doesn't inhere in things. Probability doesn't have a cause. It isn't a power of any kind. So there is no probability of God. What we can do, though, is it's like asking this. It's like asking, what's the probability? You asking yourself, what's the probability of me? Well, how do you answer that question? And we answer that question very simply by noticing that we exist, and therefore by noticing that we're existing and around, the probability of you existing is, of course, 1. Because all probability is only a statement of relations between propositions or evidence. So we have to have, there's two sides of the equation. There's what we want to know about. Does God exist? God exists is our proposition of interest. We want to calculate the probability of that, but there is no probability of that by itself. It's only with respect to certain evidence we're willing to assume. And now we have to bring the evidence in. That's the other side of the equation. There's two sides of the equation. And on both sides, we have to be very careful what we mean by the definitions, the words we use, all this kind of a thing. And I'm going to prove that to you today. All the other times we've been doing, most of the time we're on the right-hand side of the equation. We're talking about the evidence and the proposition of interest, like we did the dice roll. What's the probability of rolling? I think it was exactly a 720,000 on 216,000 rolls of a dice. Well, that's simple. There's not much ambiguity in that. We understand exactly what the proposition means. But it's not the same for other propositions. Sometimes the propositions themselves are so weighted down and ambiguous, or at least unclear, that we need to make sure that we understand exactly what they are. All of that stuff in every probability calculation, any kind of mathematical probability, anything, all of the definitions, the explicit definitions, at least the tacit definitions that we're using, are part of the probability calculation. And it's misunderstanding the definitions that often accounts for the fallacy of equivocation. I told you my favorite equivocation joke. You know, two clowns are eating a cannibal, or I blew my joke. Two cannibals are eating a clown, and one says to the other, "Does this taste funny to you?" The joke relies on the equivocation of the word funny. Well, it's not funny when we're making the same mistake in a philosophical context, because we talking at cross purposes. I have one definition of God in mind, and you have another. And we both could be right, but both could be wrong at the same time. So we have to be very careful about this. And so the definition of you, the probability of you existing, is of course 1, given that you're existing. Now the probability of you existing to me, though, is an entirely different thing, because I have different evidence. The probability of you, now it depends on my definition of you. The definition of you to you is yourself. The definition of you to me is some random viewer. Random, meaning unknown viewer. Well, I could reason several different ways. I could say, well, there's some viewers, I get at least one hit on some of these videos. So somebody out there is watching. Maybe it's just a robot. But sometimes I get a couple of views. And so that you is the probability of any viewer existing. Well, that is, again, 1, given the evidence that I have some view counts, okay? But if I give it a name, I just came across this name, Richard Hudnut, H-U-D-N-U-T, Hudnut. I thought it was an amusing name. And so what's the probability that the viewer, Richard Hudnut, who I've never met and don't know. And I think that's enough I say about that. What's the probability this particular viewer is, this particular person is watching my videos? I don't know. All I know is I have a proposition that is well enough defined, this person named Richard Hudnut. I have no evidence one way or another, except I can deduce that it's not impossible that this so-called Richard Hudnut could be watching my videos. So the probability is not zero. And I can also deduce that it's not necessarily true that, although it should be, that he and everybody should be watching my videos. Therefore, the probability is not 1. The best I can say is the probability is somewhere between 0 and 1. That's the probability of you, that definition of you with a particular name. So probability changes when you change either the definition of the thing to be that we're trying to find the probability of with respect to the evidence. You change the evidence, you change the probability. You change the definition, you change the probability. Probability is only the relation, a statement of the relation between these two sets of evidence, the proposition of interest and all the evidence. Okay, with all that being said, I saw some guys try to do this, and they did it the right way. I mean, one of the guys did it the right way. I'll have links to this at the site wmbriggs.com or wmbriggs.substack.com. I'll have the links down below you can look at. And they at least did this right way. They understood in order to say what's the probability that God exists, you have to have some kind of definition of God. Otherwise, what does the question even mean? So you have to have two definitions. You had to have a definition of God and exists. Both are crucial in calculating the probability of God exists with respect to whatever evidence that you're having or considering. All right, I keep trying to keep my computer away because I want to quote from the guy and my memory is poor. So he came up with this definition of God, the one guy. God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, and necessary. I think those are good, a good start. The problem is, it's not a problem in a bad way. It's just that each of these terms itself has multiple meanings. And we have to be careful to specify the meaning that we're using at the time. I'll give you the example. So omnipotence. He used the hoary old cliche argument, well, I don't think God can be omnipotent because God cannot create a stone in which he cannot lift. God cannot create a stone so heavy in which he could not lift. All right, you've heard that before probably. Well, all right, so we have to back out what he meant now, because he didn't define omnipotence. So we're going to back out from that conclusion of his, what he probably meant by omnipotence. He probably said the definition of omnipotence to him is can do anything. That's his definition, can do anything. And therefore, one thing that you can do is, if you can do anything, you can lift a stone so heavy you cannot lift it up. And that's a paradox, and therefore, because God could not create that stone that he can't lift up, there is no omnipotent being. Well, my definition of omnipotence is different than that. Can do any possible thing. It is, of course, an impossibility to create, for God to create a stone so heavy he cannot lift it. Just as God cannot create the number 3 to be greater than the number 2. Sorry, to be less than the number 2. This is not my day. You can see I have this scar up here. I got into a fight over somebody about the definition of probability. I won, but I have the scar. So God cannot do the impossible. Nothing can do the impossible. The impossible is, by definition, not possible. So omnipotence doesn't mean can do anything. It can mean can do any possible thing, and that still leaves us open for God. Of course, that doesn't demonstrate that God exists, because we're just having the definition of omnipotence here. But that he is omnipotent is in no way, no proof against him. Okay, omniscient. This is another one. So he said, because God knows everything that's going to happen, therefore you have no free will. So his definition, and therefore, because we have free will, God can't exist. Okay, so what's wrong with that? We have to, again, back out what his definition of omniscient is. Remember, we're all on the left-hand side of the equation here for all this stuff. his definition of omniscient is that knowledge equals cause. When it's not true. I just say omniscient is just all knowledge. I know tomorrow it's going to, the sun is going to rise in the east. You probably know the same thing, unless you, I won't make the joke. But in any case, you know you probably know the sun's going to rise in the east too. Is my knowledge creating the sun rising in the east? No. My knowledge has nothing to do with whatever it is. I may know when I go to the ice cream place, they have this thing called, boy, I can't remember it, road fill or road tar and something, I can't remember. It's a ice cream that has all this chocolate and nuts, all this kind of stuff in it. And they have vanilla. I know when I go to the, I know I'm predicting what I'm going to do. I have knowledge of what I'm going to do. That knowledge is not causing me to do that. My knowledge is not causing me to pick this, and so therefore I have no free will. My free will is picking the road fill or whatever it's called. I can't remember the name of it. That's what's causing it. My will is causing that. So, but my knowledge of my will, my intellect knowing my will is going to do, that's not causing it. So no, this is not true. God knowing everything does not take away free will. Omnibenevolence. The argument there is, he said, it was a confusing argument that he made, but I'll give you the more common one. I couldn't follow his argument. It didn't make any sense. He basically said, there is no possible best of all worlds, but there's better of all. There can be better worlds or something like this. And therefore, each one could be more moral than the next. Well, omnibenevolence. That's his definition was a mystery to me. My definition is even simpler. That he used the term morality, and my definition is just good, the good. I'm going to pause here. I had to interrupt there. I had a phone call I had to take. Okay, so his definition of benevolence included, his argument included morality. And that brings up what is well known as the problem of evil. But the way the problem of evil is usually stated is incorrect. The problem is if there is no God, if there is no ultimate yardstick with which to measure any good or evil, there is no good or evil. It just doesn't exist. There's only your feelings. There's only your opinion, and it doesn't matter. Your feelings or your opinion don't matter. There is no evil without God. There is no immorality without God. There's no morality without God. There's neither. And the full implications of that, we'll discuss in another, I've written about that before, and you'll see links, at the site wmbriggs.com or wmbriggs.substack.com, and I've written about that more in depth, and I'll have a lot more to say about that in the future. But there is no right or wrong or anything like this if God doesn't exist. So there's just opinion. And that has absolutely deep implications and so forth. But the whole point of it was he kind of assumed that there was a morality and didn't define where that morality would be measured against or come from or something like this. So he failed in that way too. The last is the necessary being. He just said, well, there can be no such thing as a necessary being. So which is not the way the argument works. The necessary being is real brief. I'm not, the whole point of this video is not to convince you that God exists. I haven't talked about God existing by any of these things. I'm just kind of showing you how probability can change depending on the definitions that you use, not just the evidence. We're talking about the left-hand side of the equation, and we have to define what we mean. And if we aren't explicitly clear, probabilities can differ between people markedly. Okay, so we have to be very clear. So I'll give you the real brief rundown on a necessary being without intending to be full or complete or anything like that. So don't bother complaining about it. I already know. There has to be a reason why things are the way they are. Now you can a cause. By a reason I mean a cause, and cause is in the full sense of a cause. There has to be a material, efficient, formal, and a final cause why anything is the way it is. Now you could say everything is caused by simpler laws in quotes, laws of the universe and so forth. But there has to be a reason why the laws are the way the laws are. And you could say, well, there must be a more basic reason that why the laws are like they are here. Maybe universe is split off, and this universe would get these laws, and this universe get these laws, and this universe get these laws. There has to be a reason. There has to be a cause why this split happened, or the way that the causes can be generated from. There has to be a deeper reason for that. And you can keep going like this, but you can't keep going forever. There has to be an ultimate, base, singular cause, which we call God, for the reason why everything is the way it is. And there could not even be existence. That, remember, I said that God exists. We had to have two words, exists. And that falls into this necessary being part here, which is already too much for us because we're just trying to talk about probability here and what are the chances. So I have lots more material for you at the blog, which I've given you. And that's it for this time. Remember, if you have any interesting coincidences, weird stories and things like this, feel free to send them my way, and I will see if I can get to them. Thank you very much.